Emma's fingers trembled as she unfolded the crisp, yellowed letter that had been slipped under her apartment door. The paper smelled of dust and something faintly metallic, like old coins left to tarnish. The handwriting was elegant but uneven, as though penned by a hand unsteady with age, or fear. To the curious soul who dares, it began, the Hargrave mansion awaits you. Within its walls lie secrets forgotten by time, but heed this warning, count the steps of the grand staircase carefully. Miss one, and you may never leave. The invitation was unsigned, yet it felt intensely personal, as though the sender knew of Emma's obsession with abandoned places. She had spent years exploring derelict hospitals, crumbling theaters and overgrown cemeteries, documenting every decayed detail on her blog. But Hargrave Mansion was different. She'd never heard of it, and a quick search yielded nothing, no history, no rumors, not even a photograph. It was as if the house had been erased from memory. That night, Emma barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities. By dawn, she'd packed her camera, a flashlight, and a notebook, driving to the address scrawled at the bottom of the letter. The outskirts of town gave way to dense woods, the road narrowing until it was little more than a dirt path. And then, emerging from the trees like a spectre, stood the mansion. Its towering gables sagged under the weight of time, and the windows glared like hollow eyes. A rusted iron gate groaned as she pushed it open, the sound a whisper of warning. Her breath hitched as she approached the front door. Something about the air felt wrong, too still, too heavy. Yet the thrill of the unknown quickened her pulse. She touched the doorknob, icy against her skin, and pushed. The hinges screamed. Inside, the darkness yawned wide, promising answers, and dangers she couldn't yet fathom. The letter's final words echoed in her mind, count the steps carefully. She would. But even the most careful steps could lead to places from which there was no return. The moment Emma's boots crunched onto the gravel driveway of the forgotten mansion, the air thickened with the scent of damp earth and rotting wood. The building loomed before her, its weathered facade barely visible beneath tangled ivy and moss. The letter had been cryptic, its neat script promising secrets behind the mansion's crumbling walls. But it was the final line that had sent a shiver down her spine, count the steps carefully. She barely noticed the figure stepping from the shadows until a dry voice rasped, "You're not welcome here." Emma turned to see a gaunt man hunched under the weight of a frayed coat. His eyes, sunken and yellowed, darted toward the mansion's entrance as if expecting something to emerge. The caretaker, Mr. Holloway, as he introduced himself, shook his head slowly. "The stairs," he muttered, knotted fingers clutching a rusted key. "They change, they remember." Emma raised an eyebrow, more intrigued than intimidated. "Change how?" Holloway's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You'll see. If you're foolish enough to go in." He pressed the key into her hand, his skin ice cold, and retreated to a ramshackle shed at the edge of the property. He wouldn't, or couldn't, follow her inside. The lock gave way with a groan, and Emma pushed the door open. A rush of stale, frigid air coiled around her, carrying the faintest hint of something sweet and decaying. She flicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting through the dust-choked foyer. At the center stood the grand staircase, its once elegant banisters now warped and splintered. The caretaker's warning echoed in her mind, but Emma smirked. She'd explored dozens of abandoned places, and none had ever been more than drafty ruins. She took the first step. The wood creaked, the sound too loud in the silence. Then she felt it, a whisper of movement at her back, like fingers brushing her neck. She spun around, heart pounding, but the doorway was empty. Just the wind, she told herself. But the door had been closed. Swallowing hard, Emma turned back to the staircase and continued upward, the chill in the air deepening with every step. Emma's breath hitched as she placed her foot on the first step of the grand staircase, the wood groaning under her weight. The air was thick with dust, and the silence around her felt heavy, unnatural. She counted each step as she ascended, 1, 2, 3, her voice barely above a whisper. By the time she reached the top, she had counted 13 steps. A chill crawled up her spine, but she pushed the feeling aside, assuming she must have miscounted. She turned to descend, her hand gripping the banister tightly. But as her foot touched the first step down, her stomach lurched. There were 14 steps now. Her pulse raced as she scrambled back up, recounting, 13. She turned again, and the number changed. 14, then 15. The staircase seemed to twist in on itself, elongating impossibly. The walls around her warped, the once elegant wallpaper peeling to reveal damp, mold-covered bricks beneath. A whisper slithered through the air, so faint she almost missed it. Amara. Her name, drawn out like a sigh. The voice was brittle, tinged with something desperate. She spun around, but the hallway behind her was empty. Her hands trembled as she gripped the banister tighter, her knuckles white. The flickering light from her flashlight cast jagged shadows across the walls, making the staircase seem alive. A cold draft brushed against her neck, and she gasped, stumbling back. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Stay." The word curled around her like smoke. Her breath came in ragged gasps as she frantically tried to descend, but the steps beneath her feet seemed to shift, mocking her efforts. Then she saw it, a shadow at the top of the stairs. A figure, tall and thin, its edges blurred as if woven from the darkness itself. It didn't move. It didn't need to. Emma knew with icy certainty that it was watching her, waiting. The whisper came once more, this time from all around her, as if the house itself was speaking. Count again. Her throat tightened. Something was very, very wrong, and she was no longer sure she could leave. Emma's breath came in short, ragged gasps as she froze mid-step. At the top of the grand staircase, a shadowy figure materialized from the gloom, its edges flickering like smoke caught in an unfelt breeze. It had no distinct features, just a hollow, humanoid shape, yet she felt its gaze pierce through her. A cold dread settled in her chest as it raised one wispy arm, fingers uncurling in a slow, deliberate invitation. Come closer, it seemed to whisper, though no words touched the air. Her instinct screamed at her to run. She whipped around, ready to bolt back down the stairs. But the steps behind her were no longer there. Instead, the staircase stretched onward, impossibly long, twisting in on itself like a serpent coiled to strike. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears as she took a step down, then another, but the foyer never grew nearer. The walls seemed to breathe around her, the air thick with the scent of damp wood and something older, something rotten. A stifled sob escaped her lips as she clutched the banister, her fingers sinking into the wood as if it was soft as clay. The figure above her remained motionless, but the whispers grew louder, her name threading through them like a curse. Emma. Emma. She squeezed her eyes shut, willing herself to wake from whatever nightmare this was. But when she opened them again, the shadow had descended a step, its form rippling like ink in water. Panic seized her. She tried counting the steps again. 12, 13, 14. But the numbers slithered out of order each time she blinked. The air grew colder, the walls closer, and the figure now loomed just an arm's length away. Its presence pressed against her skin, a weightless, suffocating thing. What do you want? She cried out, her voice swallowed by the house. The shadow didn't answer. It simply pointed upward, toward the darkened hall at the top of the stairs, where something far worse waited. Emma's hands trembled as she flipped through the brittle pages of Mr. Holloway's diary, the ink faded but still legible. The entries spoke of a time long past, when the mansion was first erected on a patch of land whispered to be cursed by the townsfolk. The builder, a reclusive aristocrat, had ignored the warnings, only to vanish without a trace shortly after completing the grand staircase. Holloway's writings detailed how the staircase was no ordinary construction. It was a gateway, a living thing that fed on the fear of those who dared to climb it. The diary told of others who had come before her, lured by promises of hidden secrets or forgotten treasure. Each one had fallen victim to the extra step, a trap that twisted reality around them. The shadowy figure she'd seen was Sarah, a young woman who had disappeared decades ago, her fate sealed when she failed to solve the mansion's riddle. Now she was bound to the house, a spectral guide for the next unfortunate soul. Emma's breath hitched as she read Holloway's final entry. A confession. He had once been like her, curious and bold, until the house claimed him too. His role as caretaker wasn't by choice, it was a punishment, a way to atone for his survival while others perished. The air grew heavier as Emma closed the diary, the weight of realization pressing down on her. The whispers around her grew louder, urging her to climb again. But now she understood the house wasn't just haunted, it was hungry. And if she didn't find a way out soon, she would join Holloway and Sarah, forever trapped in its cursed embrace. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as she stared at the shadowy figure now stepping into the dim light. The form solidified into a girl not much older than herself, her hollow eyes brimming with sorrow. "My name is Sarah," the girl whispered, her voice like rustling leaves. "I've been waiting for you." Emma's pulse pounded in her ears. "What do you want?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Sarah's lips curled into a sad smile. "The house chooses its victims," she explained. "The staircase is a test. Fail, and you take my place as its guardian. Succeed and you leave, but the cycle continues." A cold dread settled in Emma's chest. "How do I solve it?" she asked, desperation clawing at her. Sarah gestured to the ever-shifting steps below. "The answer lies in the count," she said. "But it's not about numbers, it's about what you bring with you." Emma's mind raced. The steps kept changing, 13, then 14, then 13 again. She thought of Mr. Holloway's warning, his fear of the staircase having a mind of its own. Sarah's voice echoed in her ears, "The house feeds on fear. It twists your thoughts, makes you doubt yourself." A realization struck her. The extra step wasn't real, it was a trick, an illusion fed by her own terror. Closing her eyes, Emma took a shaky breath. "I'm afraid," she admitted aloud, her voice barely a whisper. The moment the words left her lips, the air grew still. The whispers ceased. Sarah's form flickered, her expression shifting to something like relief. "You understand," she murmured. "Now go, before it's too late." Emma turned and ran, the staircase shuddering beneath her. Behind her, the wood splintered and collapsed into darkness. She didn't look back. Emma's breath came in ragged gasps as she stood frozen on the shifting staircase, the shadowy figure of Sarah looming above her. The whispers grew louder, swirling around her like a suffocating fog. Sarah's hollow voice echoed in her mind, "Admit your fear, or join me forever." As Emma clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. She had spent her life chasing the thrill of the unknown, but now, faced with the true horror of the mansion, she finally understood. She was terrified. With a shuddering breath, Emma whispered, "I'm afraid." The words hung in the air, trembling like the last leaf of autumn. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the staircase beneath her feet shuddered violently. The walls of the mansion groaned as if in protest, and the shadows writhed like living things. The figure of Sarah let out a mournful wail, her form dissolving into mist. The steps beneath Emma's feet cracked and splintered, collapsing into an abyss of darkness. She screamed as she fell, and then silence. Emma awoke sprawled on damp grass, the early morning sun casting pale light over the empty field where the mansion had once stood. The air was still, the only sound the distant call of a crow. She sat up, heart pounding, her clothes damp with dew. The mansion was gone, as if it had never existed. She looked around wildly, searching for Mr. Holloway, but he was nowhere to be seen. Had he ever been real? Or had he been a ghost, bound to the house like Sarah? As Emma stumbled to her feet, a cold realization settled over her: the curse wasn't truly broken. It had only moved on, waiting for the next curious soul to step onto that staircase, to count the steps, to feel that creeping dread when the numbers didn't add up. Somewhere, in some forgotten corner of the world, the extra step still waited. And Emma knew, with a sickening certainty, that it would always find its next victim. She turned and ran, though she wasn't sure if she was running toward something, or away from the nightmare that would haunt her forever.